Step up and speak out.
You're indeed tuned into ZFM Stereo, my station, your station, the hottest radio in town. My name is Larry Kwirirayi on this special edition of The Platform. We're on until the top of the hour. We should be discussing the life of the late Morgan Tsvangirai. And I want to give you a bit of a background of this man, as if he needs background, before I bring in our guest. He's the former Prime Minister and unfortunately passed away in South Africa at the age of 65 yesterday. And this news was confirmed by his family as well as confirmed by members of his party. Now, Mr. Tsvangirai was the leader of the biggest opposition party in Zimbabwe, the MDCT, and across the board, he was given a lot of credit for his courage and his determination, being a person who expanded democratic spaces in as far as Zimbabwe is concerned. Now, leading some of the condolences today was the president of Zimbabwe, Emmerson Mnangagwa. Let's listen to him speaking as he led the condolences today.
As a nation, we feel we have lost a man who has his contribution to the political landscape of this country. Yes, he was in the opposition, but he was striving to make sure there was democracy in the country from his perspective. And he has been in the political arena for a very long time. So our politics have been shaped by his contribution in this country. And obviously also we had him as Prime Minister for a period of 5 years or so. So it's very important that we as a government must pay our respects to one of us. We are likely to, first of all, last night instructed the Zimbabwe Embassy in Pretoria to assist in any manner possible for catering the body, to make sure the body is kept in the correct place and so on, and they gave every assistance possible. But once they will have come here, I'll discuss with my colleagues in fact, I've already discussed with my colleagues what honor we are going to give him. We'll make him a state-assisted funeral. It will be taken by the state.
So as you have a proclamation from the president himself, it says a man who shaped the politics of this country. Even though he was from a different side of the political divide, he was instrumental in shaping the politics of this country. And then, as you also heard here from the president, a state-assisted funeral will be held. And according to the family members, if you've been listening to the news on ZFM Stereo, it will be taking place. And then just to say something, just get in touch with us on 0731 168 045 and what we want on our WhatsApp number. Some of the messages so far that we've heard from you, I'm just going to read some of this. Says my heartfelt to the Tsvangirai family and who's the Tsvangirai family and the whole nation on the untimely death of Mkoma Morgan Richard Tsvangirai. You'll be dearly missed. Rest in peace. There's a message that came in. I just want to say rest in peace to Morgan Tsvangirai. There's another message. The other one, for the earlier message was DJ Bongs from Hillside. And then we've got Ian Lovo from Pretoria North who says, thank you very much for tuning in from out there. I just want to say rest in peace to Morgan Tsvangirai. Franco Brown Zimbabwe got in touch with us also with a heartfelt message. Someone says, President Tsvangirai nyika yose iri kuchema asi tinoti President Zororai Murugare. And I'm going to be reading a lot more of your messages. I keep them coming in. But on the phone, live all the way from the United Kingdom, I've got a man who essentially worked with Mr. Tsvangirai during the what is often referred to as the GNU, or some call it the inclusive government. Dr. Alex Magaisa, welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you for having me.
First of all, just what are your first thoughts following the passing away of Mr. Tsvangirai?
Well, it's a very sad day, very dark time for Zimbabweans who have followed Mr. Tsvangirai. A lot of us who have worked with him, it's a deeply personal loss. He is someone that we looked up to, someone who inspired a generation, someone who was genuine and sincere in what he was trying to achieve. And he was, without doubt, one of the most important political figures of our time. And he will be sorely missed.
And then, but before I go on that, when was the last time that you were able to talk to him?
I last spoke to him last year. It must have been in September when I was in Zimbabwe. I made arrangements to go and see him. He was looking well. He was confident that he was going to recover. And he was looking forward to campaigning for the 2018 election. Of course, it was clear that the cancer was affecting him, but his mind was alert, and he continued to be hopeful that the future was bright for himself and also for Zimbabwe.
And then we're going to go back just to give a background, because we also want to talk about the legacy, his legacy, and I think a big part of the legacy was your having worked closely with him, particularly during the GNU. Was that the first time that you started working with him?
Well, at a direct level, yes, that was the first time that I was working with him. I realized, of course, when I was working with him that for many years he had been following the work that I was doing in the media, and that's partly the reason why he decided that I might be of some assistance to him, which was truly humbling. He was always someone who was willing to learn. Despite his many achievements, he never put himself on a pedestal to appear like he was a Mr. Know-it-all. He was always willing to listen. And that was a quality that endeared him to a lot of people that he worked with, including myself.
Okay, you've just given us a little bit of in as far as that is concerned, but a lot of the times you just gave an example of one of the things him being someone who wasn't a Mr. Know-it-all and so forth. But I want to take you a little bit back or a little bit forward. I don't know at which point we've come to now. Let's talk about your first day in office with him. What was that like? And also, how were you invited to work with him?
Well, the manner in which I was invited to work with him was quite a pleasant surprise. I was working with the Constitutional Parliamentary Committee, which was making the Constitution. And I had been invited by the MDC through Douglas Monzora to be part of that team as an advisor in 2011. So that in itself was a humbling experience to be able to participate in that process. And then, of course, during that process, Mr. Tsvangirai then called me and asked me if I could assist him, which was, like I said, a very pleasant surprise, because I had no expectation at all that at some point I would work with a man of his stature. I was, of course, happy to work with him. I was honored to have that role. And that's how we started. The way that he asked me was, it was not an order. It was a humble request. And I thought that was something honorable, and we continued to work together. The first day actually at work, he was not at the office. He had gone on an overseas trip when I arrived, and that perhaps is the subject of another day. Even when I have to write the story of how I worked with him, I always say that I would never betray his confidence. But we are talking about his legacy. I can assure you that when he came, he welcomed me, and he understood that I had come to assist. And one of the things I should say is that our relationship was based on frank exchange. And I said to him that I would come to work with him, but he must be prepared that I would say some things that he doesn't like. And he said to me, that's exactly what I'm looking for, because I'm tired of people who tell me what I want to hear all the time. And so I've always been, even afterwards, I'm one person who would always say, no, Mr. Tsvangirai, I think you must do it this way or that way. And we would disagree respectfully, but we respected each other.
0731168045. I just want to read this message here. Just the emotions that are pouring out at the moment. Rest in peace to our icon, Richard Morgan Tsvangirai, our great hero. You shaped our political ground, fighting for democracy. We are poor without you. And then also here, I mean, there are questions here that are coming in. I think those are questions that we're going to have a look at later on, in as far as the political party is concerned. We're going to ask you those questions later. But what I want to ask now is, what was the biggest tasks that you got from him, and what were you able to achieve from it?
Well, one of the things that we were doing, and what I was asked to do, and for some people it might seem like it was a useless exercise now, because we never got into office, was I was supposed to be in charge of what we call the transitional team. Because the whole idea was that if Mr. Tsvangirai were elected to become president of Zimbabwe at an election, then he would have to hit the ground running. And it was important to have a plan. So during the time that I was there, I was leading a team that was creating this transitional plan, the first 100 days and all those plans. And we worked tirelessly with a dedicated group of people who worked for the Prime Minister. And we came up with this. Unfortunately, it's something that will now remain in the archive, because we never got the opportunity to be in power. But he showed me that he was a leader who understood the importance of forward planning, who understood that government is not something that you just do on an as-it-comes basis, but that you've got to have plans for it. And that's why he had created this office, which was supposed to prepare for transition.
Okay, just going to read another message here. 0731168045 says, somebody said, didn't put your name. Please put your name so that we can credit you with the message. Someone says, may his soul rest in peace. We lost a father. And that's another thing that many people talk about, a personal relationship with the late former Prime Minister. You talk a lot about the professional type of relationship, but what was the personal relationship that you had with him?
As I said, one of the things that he discovered, of course, I knew myself already because he was already Sare to all of us. But one of the things that he discovered was that I was also a Sare, Tsvangirai, and I'm Saigwa. So it was quite a touching moment, because then he realized, we are clansmen. And so that also cemented our relationship, because, after work, it was possible for us to sit down and have a drink and discuss personal issues, and he would confide in me as if he were confiding in a brother. That was quite a personal touch. But we were able to separate our relationship between the personal and the professional. One of the things that I wish to say, and I've written about this in the last few days, is that Mr. Tsvangirai was someone who was in a position of authority, but I think those clouds of authority sat very uneasily on him, because he was very much an ordinary person. He was a guy who never looked at himself as if he was more special than other people. He was much happier whenever he traveled to his village, where he spent time with his mother, and he would always take an opportunity to go to the village whenever he could. On one occasion, I wrote about this. We went to Bindura when we were going to a rally. And surprisingly for all of us, he took us to one of his friend's house, where we spent about 30 minutes to an hour. And he was so happy there, so relaxed there, meeting his old friends, people that he had grown up with as a minor when they were starting families. And he was happy to be with these people. And I saw someone who felt more at home among the ordinary people. And I think this is the quality that endeared into so many people. And it's a quality that a lot of other politicians don't have, because a lot of other politicians tend to look at themselves as if they are more special than the people they are working with. Morgan Tsvangirai was someone who never left those roots, who continued to identify himself with those people. And I think that is something that a lot of people can learn from, whether they're in politics, in business, or elsewhere. People tend to forget their friends. They forget where they came from. And I think that's a quality that really alienates leaders from the people.
Okay, 0731-168-045 Tariro in Bulawayo says ngenkathazo zika Morgan Tsvangirai sizwe ubuhlungu, and then also got a message here from Mlambo in Kariba who says Richard Morgan Tsvangirai is an icon who shaped the political system in Zimbabwe, is a man whom no one can replace or meet his charisma. Now, still looking at the 100, having achieved the 100 days, there's certain achievements that you make. You mentioned the writing of the documents and so forth, but I mean, other than that, not being able to move forward at that, what would you classify as perhaps your biggest personal regret and in your interactions with him?
Well, when we're talking about biggest achievement, perhaps I should have qualified my statement by saying that, of course, there are many more things that we did together. I mean, for example, I would count the writing of the Constitution as one of the major achievements of the government in which Mr. Tsvangirai was involved, and part of that was the role that the MDC and Mr. Tsvangirai played. And I should also mention that, this is a quality that people tend to forget whenever they are talking about leaders. Morgan Tsvangirai, he was someone who allowed others to flourish. And if you look at many leaders who have either been associated with the MDC or come from the MDC, or even the opportunity that he gave me to come and work with him was in itself an opportunity that allowed me to flourish. But you can look at others, people like Nelson Chamisa, Tendai Biti, Douglas Monzora, and so many others. They have gained credit for a lot of things that they have done in their individual capacities. But actually, they were able to achieve those things because Morgan Tsvangirai was a decent enough leader who did not micromanage and allowed them to go out and flourish. Regret, I can assure you, my own perspective is, having chosen to be involved in that office, I have no regrets whatsoever. I was able to go through a learning experience. I have to say that one of the worst experiences that I had was on July 31, August 1, the election period, because we went from a big high to a very big low, because we were hopeful. We were expecting that we were going to succeed. And there was every reason to believe that we would. And unfortunately, I spent the whole day with him at his home, waiting to see how things were. When you are a leader, the top can be very lonely, and he often spent time on his own. And I would spend time with him just to ensure that he had sufficient company, that he was updated on what was happening. And unfortunately, things didn't go to plan. That in itself is something that really hurt us. Do we regret that we were involved in that situation? No, I think it's an experience that we went through. We did what we did because we were genuine about what we were trying to achieve. But unfortunately, things did not go our way.
You tune into ZFM Stereo, my station, your station. On the phone, I've got Dr. Alex Magaisa up until the top of the hour, where we are talking about the sterling contribution towards the democratic spaces in this country that the late former Prime Minister Morgan Tsvangirai, who passed away in South Africa yesterday at the age of 65. Dad, I want to read a couple of messages before we take a quick break and come back and keep talking about the life of this man. We've got here Nyasha Kabwe in Mazo who says it's a great loss to all Zimbabwe. He was a man who was planning for the future. May his soul rest in peace. I've got another message here. Okay, I've got read that one from Nyasha. I'm going to take a quick break. Please keep those messages coming in. And if you've got any questions for Dr. Magaisa, please send them through. And let's have this very important conversation in as far as Zimbabwe is concerned. ZFM Stereo, my station, your station, the hottest radio in town.
To all you Twitter heads, connect with ZFM Stereo on twitter.com/ZFM Stereo /ZFM Stereo. To all you Twitter heads, connect with ZFM Stereo on twitter.com/ZFM Stereo /ZFM Stereo. It's ZFM Stereo Talk on
Honorable Nduna, it is always a pleasure having you on ZFM. Have we seen a corresponding reduction in carnage, in road accidents, since there seems to have been this escalation in the police presence on the roads?
At 5 deaths per day in Zimbabwe, we are far away from the global average of 3 deaths per day. So I would imagine with the type of infrastructure that we've got, we are just making it worse for the motoring public.
The talk that gets you talking. Mondays to Thursdays between 6 p.m. and 9 p.m. News, lifestyle, charts, live radio, station highlights, and much more. Get it all on cfmstereo.co.zw.
We are just 4 months away from an election and we've lost a commander. But what I can tell you is that we do not have a crisis of the generals on the field, of those who are going to be lieutenants to make sure that we win the battle and the war against the incumbent. And we will win this election. And our only gift to President Richard Morgan Tsvangirai is our total victory at the election. Our only gift to President Morgan Tsvangirai is the convergence of all the democratic forces, making sure that we unite progressive forces in Zimbabwe in a grand coalition that will be able to give a fighting chance to the people of Zimbabwe.
The platform. Step up and speak up.
You're indeed tuned into ZFM Stereo, my station, your station, the hottest radio in town. We are having a conversation about the life of the late Morgan Tsvangirai, who was a former Prime Minister of Zimbabwe and the leader of the biggest opposition party, the MDC. And just on the phone, we've got Dr. Alex Magaisa. And in that clip that we just played was the voice of the acting president of the MDC Alliance, that is Nelson Chamisa. Now, I want to ask you, Dr. Magaisa, what's your take on the developments in the MDCT after the death of Mr. Tsvangirai, now that a new acting president has been appointed?
Well, it's important for the MDC as a political party to be able to find itself. It is going through a traumatic experience. I've witnessed similar traumas when the party went through the traumatizing election of 2013. I think we went through a very difficult period after that as a political party when I was with Mr. Tsvangirai. I'm also seeing similar effects as a result of, firstly, the serious illness that Mr. Tsvangirai had. And also, the eventual death yesterday. It's a traumatic experience. I'm not surprised that people are confused and that there is a lot of questioning going on, a lot of clashes also that are taking place. But my grandfather used to say, "Imute ichavara zayo." What he meant was that the fog will eventually clear. So there is a lot of fog. But I think that what I would like to see of these people, both the men and women in the MDC, is to honor the legacy of Mr. Tsvangirai, is to do the cultural thing from an African point of view, which is to honor the man who is now deceased and to lay him to rest, and then, of course, to attend to issues that involve the party. To preserve his legacy, he would have wanted the party to be united. He was very much in favor of the MDC Alliance, where he had begun to unite with people, some of his old comrades. And I think this unity needs to be preserved. For the political party, there is need for maturity on all sides. People need to understand that the collective is bigger than the individual egos. And I think as leaders, they need to place themselves before the party and before the organization. They must realize that to be a party, it is the people. And without the people, there's no party. And so it's important that they honor the wishes of the people. And in so doing, they will be honoring the memory of Mr. Tsvangirai.
There's something curious that you said in there, and it's come up a couple of times from questions that are saying that Pachivanu, the kind of situation where someone has just passed away and already Pautogoana in terms of what, positions and that sort of thing. Some people felt that, in as far as that from a cultural point of view, made reference to it, but I wanted to get your opinion on that. What are the implications of that, especially given now there's already been the institution of an acting president, and this is less than 24 hours since, unfortunately, the former president of the party passed away?
Well, I'm a very big fan of the late musician Simon Chimbetu. Some of your listeners may be too young to remember some of his music. He has one of his very beautiful songs called Puma and Naka. When you get a chance, please play it, Larry, at some point. But essentially, he bemoans the idea that people start distributing the property of a person even while that person is still in hospital. And I think we saw a bit of that before Mr. Tsvangirai died yesterday. And I thought it was very sad, the way that the leaders of the party were conducting themselves. And this is why we continue to implore them to understand that the most important thing here at this particular point in time is to make sure that Mr. Tsvangirai, an icon of the struggle, someone who was revered by the people, is given a dignified exit. I wrote on social media today, I said one of the most glaring ironies of this particular moment is that those people who were fighting against Morgan Tsvangirai during his lifetime are the people who are giving him a lot of respect at this particular point in time. Whereas those people who were fighting with Morgan Tsvangirai are the people who seem to be fighting each other. And I think it's a regrettable situation. I would like to see Mr. Tsvangirai's comrades putting their heads together, putting their differences together. Where we grew up, whether people do not like each other, when there is a tragedy, when there is a funeral, people put their differences aside and they do things in a proper manner. We must go back to those values. We are Africans. We've got our values, and I think we must honor and cherish them. Otherwise, we'll get lost in pursuit of power.
Okay, 0731-168-045. Get in touch with us. I'm going to read this question, but before I read this question, because Sean Zwandile from Blair asked a very good question earlier on, and then I'll ask you a follow-up question. A first question. In your opinion, and you seem to be saying, I want to get it in very simplified terms, has the party handled the succession issue properly, in your opinion?
Well, I think that it could have been handled better. I think that perhaps it could have been planned better. I also think that even in the absence of facilities to do it at this particular point in time, there would have been ways in which to do it. When people have differences, people look for mediators. People look for parties that can understand their situations and try and find common ground. The risk that I see is that even with all these parties of people who are fighting over the inheritance, if we are to use that word very loosely, is that whoever wins or whoever succeeds at the end of the day will end up losing a section of the party which is crucial to what the party needs in order to succeed. There is no political party that can do well unless it is able to maintain its numbers in the country, but also which is able to attract more numbers. But when you are showing confusion, when you are showing infighting, people begin to question whether you have the stability that is needed to create stable government. And in my opinion, there is a lot of things that are going on that could be done in a much better way, and I would like to see them doing that. And it's regrettable that we are talking politics at a time when actually we should be talking about the man who has inspired a generation. But the reason why we are talking politics is because leaders are using politics in a manner that is not befitting of this particular situation. And it's a pity that we have to be doing this on this occasion.
You're tuned into ZFM Stereo, my station, your station, the hottest radio in town. Please get in touch with us. We've still got Dr. Magaisa for the next 30 minutes, in which we're discussing this very important issue of the life and times of Morgan Tsvangirai, the former Prime Minister of Zimbabwe, and also the President of the MDC Alliance, as well as the MDCT. You knew that, Dr. Magaisa, this question was always going to come up. This is Sean Mzwandile from early on, said, in your opinion, I just want to ask Alex Magaisa, who is the most capable candidate to take over from for the MDC, and what are the chances in the upcoming general elections? I know you mentioned a bit out of it, but I think that's a very specific question.
Yes, a very specific question, which comes at a very difficult time. You see, the way that I engage with people in the MDC, my political colors are not a secret. I have a lot of sympathies with my comrades. I've worked with them. I am in a situation where I am often consulted by the different actors that are involved. I like to keep their confidence. My preferences as to where they should go, I think are more important than as to whom I think should take over. I think the people within the MDC themselves, the supporters, the members, should have the power to make a selection as to who should lead them. I think that is absolutely important because it is in accordance with the democratic tenets of the political party. Having said that, I think what is important when people make those decisions is to ensure, as I have already said, that you are able to get someone who can maintain the million-plus votes that Mr. Tsvangirai was able to get during elections, but in addition, be able to bring in something new. And therefore, when they are looking at the respective candidates, they must ask whether that person is capable of, number one, retaining the support that Mr. Tsvangirai was able to get, but in addition, what else are they bringing onto the table that would add to what the MDC already has? I think those are the critical issues that are important for the election.
And then I'm going to ask a follow-up question based on something that you said on social media, saying that this election was too early for the now acting President Nelson Chamisa. Why did you say that?
That the current election is too early for Mr. Chamisa. I think that probably could be something that may have been misconstrued as my tweet. I normally don't tweet with any name as far as the MDC is concerned. However, the position that I will make is that, as I have pointed out, the people of Zimbabwe, the MDC supporters, I think that they are capable enough. Each one of those candidates, each one of those people in the MDC is capable of bringing something onto the table. Having said that, I think a vote that is so critical in the next election is the vote of young people, the young people. And therefore, it is very important that whenever people make the choices, they are also able to identify those candidates who are able to deliver and to inspire these young people to come and register to vote as well as to go and vote. I think that is critical. As I have already pointed out, I cannot make a position as to I prefer one or the other. In fact, it would be nice if there was a presidential contest. I've always said it's important for them to come up and present their policies, because for me, it is not just about the popularity of an individual or their unpopularity, but it is about the popularity or unpopularity of their policies. Unfortunately, our politics has not progressed enough so that people deal with issues. Very often people deal with personalities. But this is why our nation continues to struggle, is because we focus too much on who is better looking, on who, which, as one of my friends would often say, we have a contest a beauty contest between bullfrogs, which is not a very good exercise. I think it's more important that we look at the policies that leaders are able to bring onto the table, because that is what advances the nation and not the personalities of individuals.
0731-168-045. Got a question. Someone who's differed with you, Dr. Magaisa, says MDC leadership have to find a leader to lead them even over this mourning period. Remember, government is coming in to assist. Really, someone has to stand as the face of the MDC. There's nothing amiss in finding a leader now. Traditionally, panoita mzukuru anongo anotungamira rufu. What would you say to that?
Well, I don't think that the contributor and myself are saying anything different. In fact, the MDC, when you look at it, the structures of the MDC, there is a group of people in the MDC, for those who are in the know, called the elders. These are people who were there at the beginning, the old chaps, the men and women who are supposed to be the repositories of the memory of the MDC, who are supposed to be the repositories of wisdom in the MDC. It is not difficult at all. In fact, if you ask me a question, I would have said that if they are going to get someone to steer the ship while they are in the process of choosing a successor, then it would be better to find someone who is not interested in they themselves becoming the president. That person will then steer the ship during the period that the party is able to look for a successor. That, to me, would seem to be sensible, but of course, it will not make sense to those who are already in the trenches and seeking political power.
So are you, in essence, saying that Advocate Chamisa has interest in being the president, in your opinion?
Well, I have not spoken to my brother. Nelson is my brother. We go back a very, very long way before and beyond politics. We have not spoken on the issue of politics. I think at the moment, the most important issue, as I have emphasized to a lot of people, is that we focus on giving Morgan Tsvangirai a dignified exit. I do think that, everybody who is within the standing committee of the MDC has potential to be able to do a good job for the party. As I've already pointed out, I'm not in a position to make any particular public choice at this particular point in time as to who is the best and who is the worst. I think they are all capable, and all I'm saying is that it would probably be a good thing for credibility, for transparency, and for purposes of ensuring that there is no unnecessary contestation and legitimacy issues if the party were to choose different paths. And unfortunately, these are things that can either be taken or rejected. But if I were asked, I would be able to offer my opinion on the matter.
Okay, you're listening to ZFM Stereo, my station, your station. We are talking to Dr. Alex Magaisa, who's all the way in the United Kingdom, who's been kind enough to take part in this conversation. We're talking about the legacy of Morgan Tsvangirai, who is the former Prime Minister of Zimbabwe and leader of the biggest opposition party in the country. I want to read a couple of messages here. Someone saying, Dr. Magaisa, munoziva chivanhu shuwa vangati vamwe vanochema mava kutoita zvokupanana zvigaro paita moso apo. And then someone says, someone else comes and says, Dr. Magaisa should be clear that the MDC has lawyers, yet there is a contestation of leadership. In all honesty, he knows who should take the helm but wants to remain quiet. This is what got us here, people keeping quiet when they see a wrong being done. What would you say to that? I mean, not necessarily just you, but a lot of instances, some people say people abdicate from responsibility of endorsing someone for fear of alienating someone else. What would you say about that situation?
Not at all. Like I said, if there is anything that is associated with me, it is that I do call a spade when I see one. I don't say that a spade is a big teaspoon. No. Even as late as last week, I was writing articles where I was bemoaning certain decisions that had been taken by the MDC, including by our now late leader, whom I worked with. And people were asking me, but you are being critical. And I always said, no, this is not personal. When we are dealing with professional issues, we have to deal with issues as they are. It's business. And we must be able to differ, but be able to go out and have a drink afterwards, after we have had our differences professionally. And so, on these issues that people are raising, that maybe I am holding back, I would not say that, because at the moment, there is nobody who has made any declaration of intention that they want to be the successor to Mr. Tsvangirai. People are simply having machinations and fighting that they want to be acting presidents and so forth. I think people should make a clear declaration that, look, the race is open. These are the contestants. These are the rules that we are going to take in order to achieve that. And as I have said, the party has got organs and structures that it can use in order to achieve that particular goal. And I think that is what is important. So it is not that I do not want to endorse anybody. It is that my endorsement at this particular point would not mean anything when nobody has declared their candidacy.
Okay, so we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to have our last segment. I also want to find out, afterwards, how you think that if this situation had been presented to Mr. Tsvangirai, how would he have handled it? That's the question I'm going to ask Dr. Magaisa after the break. ZFM Stereo, my station, your station, the hottest radio in town.
News, lifestyle, charts, live radio, station highlights, and much more. Get it all on zfmstereo.co.zw. It's ZFM Stereo Talk.
We are always moaning about the state of our roads. Your Worship, Bernard Manyenyeni, thank you, sir, for coming through to the program. Are you receiving money from Zinara? And if you are, what are you using it for?
The crisis we are facing in the last 2-3 years around potholes, firstly, it's not a problem of one city, and secondly, it's not a problem of last year or the year before. It tells the story of the 8 or so years that funds have gone to Zinara and they've not come back to the roads. That's why we are where we are.
The talk that gets you talking, Mondays to Thursdays between 6 p.m. and 9 p.m. Yes, ZFM Stereo is on YouTube. Search for ZFM Stereo and get all the action.
The platform. Step up and speak up.
You're still tuned into ZFM Stereo, my station, your station, the hottest radio in town. You are, just to remind you of some of the frequencies, 99.8 in Chivu, Beitbridge 106.1, Nyanga 98.2, Bulawayo, my hometown, 106.7, Mutale 95.4, and we're broadcasting out of Harare, where our frequency is 106.4. On the phone, I've got Dr. Alex Magaisa, a former advisor to the late Morgan Tsvangirai, who was the former Prime Minister of Zimbabwe during the inclusive government. We have so far talked about the man himself, the way that he worked with Dr. Magaisa, and then of course the legacy that comes afterwards in as far as the party going forward. There's coming back to you, Dr. Magaisa. There's a statement that came out from somebody here. A listener says the crux of the matter is MRT failed to appoint a substantive successor, and ultimately that left MDC in turmoil. The question is, will that become a legacy of a man who held this party so well together over the 20 years to now?
Yes, I said when I wrote in my article today that when a person goes through life, at the end of it, there is a balance sheet. It either has assets and it has liabilities, but it must balance. Now, my accounting knowledge is only rudimentary, but I suspect that I'm right, that is how it is. The point I try to make in this case is that we all have our weaknesses, we all have our mistakes, we all have things that we could have done better, but there are also things that we have done extremely well, the assets that we have accumulated over time. And when I assess the life and times of Mr. Tsvangirai, I see that the assets that he brought to the table were far greater than the liabilities. Now, this is, of course, I'm always frank that there are things that perhaps he could have done much better. There are certain decisions that perhaps the party could have done better. And perhaps the issue of succession is one issue that our political leaders across the board don't seem to have been able to deal with over the course of time. And I suppose this is also a problem in other areas, including business and certainly in civil society. You do get the same problem that people sometimes are not able to groom people who can then take over in future. And I think it's a culture that we need to work on to be able to understand that you can mentor young people under you, other people under you, who would then have the opportunity to take over at the time of retirement. And I have to say that I think perhaps the issue of succession is an issue that should have been dealt with much earlier and perhaps could have been handled in a better way. That is as honest as I can get on that particular matter.
Okay, and just going back to the, I know we said earlier on the last time you talked to the late Mr. Tsvangirai was in September last year, but in the run-up, especially in probably the last 2 months, had you spoken to any member of his family? And what was the, if you did, what was the emotion like, without giving away too much, of course?
Yes, I have always said that, as you qualify your question, I've always said that I would like to respect the dignity of the man and his family at this particular time. They are grieving. They are the ones who have been hurt far more than all of us. I did have conversations with his brother just a few days before Mr. Tsvangirai died. And he advised me as to how things were and how things were panning out. So the emotion, of course, was, we've all had illnesses in families. It doesn't matter how ill a person is, you always hold on to that last bit of hope. And everybody was hopeful that there would be a chance, that there would be an opportunity for him to make a recovery. But these things are planned by hands that we do not control. And unfortunately, we now know what happened yesterday. And the family is obviously devastated because Mr. Tsvangirai was a very important member of the family. He was very, very close to his mother. And they say that a parent should never have to bury their child. And I feel very sad for Mbuya Tsvangirai that she now has to preside over the burial of her son, who I believe had made her very proud during his lifetime.
Well, that's a terrible situation. And moving on from that, to your knowledge and what you can reveal, what was the emotion around the jostling that was taking place, especially some of it being very visible and very public?
Well, we talked a lot about the personal issues, as opposed to the political issues, because I had always urged them that they should stay away from the political drama. I have always used the analogy which was given to me by a late dear friend, William Bango, who said you must avoid the dance floor and keep at the balcony, because when you go to the dance floor, anything can happen. And so my advice to the family was that it was necessary to keep away from the political drama and to focus on Mr. Tsvangirai, who was unwell. And I believe that that was necessary. It was necessary. Unfortunately, and I was disappointed that other people who were obviously looking for news and other things were looking to see how much they could exploit the situation. And can I take an opportunity, Larry, using this public platform, that one of the things that disappoints me the most about our society today, which I do not recall from the time that I was growing up, is this morbid fascination with illness, with death, with macabre scenes. When people take pictures of people who are dying in accidents, people take pictures of people who are very ill in hospital. We have seen and been advised of these images that are circulating. And I ask people, how do you, in your good conscience, make a decision that you are going to circulate an image of that nature, of a man who we now know was dying? I do not think that it is proper. And I say this not because I was in a proximate position to Mr. Tsvangirai. I would say this even if it were my opponent or my enemy. who is being subjected to that situation. I think as a people, we should change, we should reform, we should have our humanity restored. I don't know whether we have been desensitized by the troubles that we have gone through and the violence that we have experienced over the years. But I have to say that it is not on, and I think people have to look very closely at themselves and ask whether there is any benefit in circulating such images.
Okay, Dr. Magaisa, we've done the heavy stuff. Now we want to go to some of the other stuff. You mentioned earlier on you enjoyed after work sharing a drink. Just what were the lighter moments like with Mr. Tsvangirai?
One of the things that makes me smile is that I was able to get to know the men beyond the official apparel of office. He is a very funny man. He's a man with a good sense of humor. Some of the things that he says, I think he used to say, I think that I cannot even repeat here. But he was an interesting man who had a good sense of humor. He never forgot where he came from. He never forgot the things that he used to do. And like I said, he had a very interesting way in which he was able to engage, which made everybody feel at home. One of the things I was writing, I think, about it today, that he enjoyed what we call a cat and mouse game with security. When you're a prime minister, you have all these security people who look after you, all these protocol people who tell you what to do, who tell you how to do this and how to do that. And he didn't like all those things. He thought that it took away his freedom, and he just wanted to be normal. He always used to ask me, why are they opening doors for me? I can open the door. I'm not, I don't have a problem, And then, so, that was the character of the man. Very ordinary, very willing to be part of the crowd, share a joke. And I think those who worked with him even longer than I will testify to the fact that he was quite an interesting gentleman. He had an infectious laughter. I don't think anybody can imitate it, but he had a way that he laughed in such a way that once it happened, and I saw it happen to people who would have come, and so forth. But whenever he started laughing, they would say, but he's one of us. And I suppose that's why he was able to blend in and to work with other people in a manner that a lot of other people who are so pretentious are unable to do.
So, the other side of it all, let's talk, we're a music station primarily. What kind of music did he listen to, if he ever got to listen to music with him? And did he dance from time to time?
Well, it's actually interesting that you asked that question. One of the things that he did a few weeks after I joined him was, I had my own car, and he had his cars, and, he had, I think, about 3 cars. So the way that the security would drive in between, one in front, one behind, and then he would be in between, and then would be way behind. Now, one day we were in Bulawayo, and he said, he called his aide, and he said, tell Dr. Magaisa to come and sit in my car. That was fascinating because, we then laughed. Other people said, now you've graduated, now he trusts you that he can sit with you. And so when we were in that car, whenever we were traveling with my guy, my friend who was with me, we used to play a lot of music, different types of music. I love Zimbabwe music, I'm a big Chimbetu fan, and so we used to play a lot of music. I got into this guy's car, and there was classical music. It was classical music all the way. So I said, maybe we should have some different music. He says, but this helps me to sleep. So sometimes you'll be talking to him, you'll be having a conversation, and then you'd end up speaking on your own because you'd be sleeping. So I think classical music helped him to relax. It does allow you. It's like a lullaby sometimes. So I don't know whether it was his favorite music. I never asked him, but he seemed not to care much about some of the stuff that we played in our own cars.
But there was a rumor that went around that he really enjoyed the music of Westlife. So you think somebody was lying?
It is possible that he did. Like I said, the moments that him and I played music were very rare. And on those occasions that I was able to travel with him in his car, he normally he didn't really bother much about the music.
Okay, and a most important, a very important aspect is food. What kind of food did he enjoy?
He loved his traditional food. When I was in his home and perhaps we have worked late, sometimes he would invite me in and we would have food and yam, murione, dovi, and the like. You know, he always had a variety of different foods. But I think he was someone who, I don't think he had any specific, I would say, requests which were special. He liked what was available, and he in his home, he liked to get them to cook the stuff that he grew up eating.
Dr. Magaisa, we could speak until the cows come home about the great life of Mr. Tsvangirai, who have unfortunately passed away. But before we go, first of all, what song would you like as a dedication to him that you'd like us to play? And then finally, your last words on this great man.
You know, I just want to say that it was an honor and a privilege to have the opportunity to work with this man. I know that he means a lot to a lot of people, and sometimes those of us who had the opportunity to be in proximity with him for some time may take for granted this whole reverence that people have for him. But, you know, we will continue and we must continue to preserve his legacy. He was a man of peace. He was a man who wanted the best for Zimbabwe. As I said, he always said to me that whatever decisions we are making are decisions that are in the interest of Zimbabweans. And I will remember that. I will remember that he was tenacious. He suffered a lot during his time as an opposition leader. He went through some terrible, terrible things that no person should ever go through. But he persevered right to the end. He never wavered. He continued to be focused. And I think that inspiration is something that needs to be recorded for generations to come. In terms of music, you know, I'm a man of different tastes. Like I said, I would like if people were to play some Simon Chimbetu, and I said that song is called Puma and Naka. It's an appropriate song because it talks about you know, these are people who are squabbling over the inheritance. I think it's an appropriate song. I've been playing it for some time during the time that Mr. Tsvangirai was ill, and it continues to be a song that touches my heart. But I would also love us to have Bob Marley, No Woman, No Cry. I think it's a beautiful song. Originally, it's supposed to be No Woman, Don't Cry. So it's not about the fact that if you don't have a woman, you don't cry. The idea is that no woman, please don't cry. And I think it's important. It has a strong political message as well, because it reminds us, with Mr. Tsvangirai, when we were sitting at Charterhouse, which would have been the government yard for Bob Marley with Georgie. And we make the firelight, and of course we cook our porridge, and we don't have much. Our feet are our only carriage. I love No Woman, No Cry. So I would ask for indulgence that you play both.
Dr. Magaisa, thank you very much for taking part in this conversation.
Thank Thank you so much, Larry. Thank you for the opportunity.
So we're going to play out with a song from Bob Marley, the song called No Woman, No Cry. Thank you very much for joining us for this discussion in which we talked about the life and times of the man that is... The man that is Morgan Tsvangirai, who unfortunately passed away at the age of 65. Other than that, say I'll be back with you next week. Take care of yourself and the people that you love. You are tuned into ZFM Stereo. Coming up after the news, of course, is Judgment Yard going on until midnight. Other than that, as I say where I come from, my name is Kwirirayi, and as we say where we come from, Asilwi siyasebenza.